going to just do a little bit of history for you. My small business has now for decades really been focused on veterans policy. And I ended up doing a lot of work in and out of DC, although I'm from St. Louis, and all of my work in DC before I went there was volunteer. So anyway, I want to make it clear as well that my expertise is policy, and I look at policy as the overall structure that initiates the kind of process steps that are necessary for the men and women on this call to successfully navigate contracting opportunities, secure those contracts, and then deliver the product or service. So I'm thankful that you all are trying to do that. And the experts on this call about that process are Walter and the OSDBU and the VBOX and so on and so on. I think most of you already know that. I want to start with just a touch of a history thing because I think it's important for the context of this kind of work. After World War II and then during the Korean War, there were 2 GI Bills created. And in those GI Bills, over the first 30 years of those GI Bills, the VA provided more than 300,000 small business loans to veterans who had returned home from their wartime experience. And in 1974, that 30-year mark, Congress rescinded that authority because for my generation of veterans as we came home, in 1974, the VA guaranteed 2 small business loans for veterans. So we went from an average of about 30,000 loans a year to 2. And Congress rescinded that authority. Now, my job through my local community not-for-profit that we started in the early 70s, I ended up as the executive director and wrote all the grants and managed all the staff and the work that we did. And that began to include entrepreneurial veterans and some coordination with the SBA district office in St. Louis. And that led to some program and policy stuff because I ended up as a contractor to the White House, to the Department of Labor, to the Veterans Administration, to other federal agencies, the FDIC and others, because of my experience and expertise working with veterans. Now, when I got to SBA, it took us 25 years to get the Veterans Entrepreneurship and Small Business Development Act ginned up, drafted, introduced, and then passed. For 24 years of those 25 years, members of Congress blocked us. In 1999, Congress unanimously voted to recreate a veterans small business program, and that includes procurement for service-disabled veterans. And I want to give a shout out here to a gentleman who's no longer with us, but his name is John Lopez. John was from California. And John is the reason there is a disabled veteran contracting program in the federal government. I don't think without John we would have gotten that done. And his effort was based on a state model that he created in California in 1987. And John and I became friends and mentors to each other. So anyway, when I got to SBA in 2000, one of the things that I did was I dug back into the history of how SBA came to be created and what were the authorities, because when you become a bureaucrat, I had been a, excuse me, I had been a small business owner prior to that. When you become a bureaucrat, if you don't have, quote, authority, you can't really create program activity. So the law gave me a whole range of authority, but SBA had authority way beyond what I ever understood before I got there. So I ended up going back to 1932 and what was called the creation of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. And that Reconstruction Finance Corporation was utilized by Congress during World War II and during the Korean War to create federal corporations who played a role in ensuring that our nation maximize small business involvement in DoD procurement for the war efforts. So as I dug back into that history, that's when I began to understand this is where contracting opportunities started for small businesses in America. And in those days, up until the late 1950s, diversity wasn't defined as ethnic or race or gender or background. It was really a geographic diversity. The authorities contained in the Reconstruction Finance Corporation were all moved to the SBA when it was created in 1953. And then in 1958, those authorities were entered into specifically what's called Section 8 of the Small Business Act, not to be confused with the 8A program, which is an entirely different piece. So anyway, that history became very important to me because as I worked at SBA and as we created the Disabled Veterans Procurement Program government-wide, I thought, and I still believe, that SBA misinterpreted the procurement authority for veteran small businesses. So one of the things I'm working with Walter and others on now is how do we resurrect that dialogue and discussion about taking what is a unique authority at VA today, specifically for veteran small businesses, in addition to the Service Disabled Veteran Small Business Program. How do we take that authority and broaden it out across the entirety of the American government procurement system? That's what I'm working on. And it's mostly because I'm twice retired now. It's mostly my hobby as much as it is anything else. I'm going to give you one example of why these old stories are, I think, important today. In 1947, the VA guaranteed or insured 79,864 small business loans for returned veterans. So this is in 1947. So this is the World War II generation of veterans. In 2017, some 70 years later, the VA guaranteed 3,661 loans for veterans. So in 70 years of progress, we went from almost 80,000 small business loans a year guaranteed by our government when we come home to, for my generation and your generation, less than 4,000. And anybody who has tried to start a small business understands that access to capital, or if you will, cash flow, is critical as you begin to start your business. And I think there's a huge gap in the opportunity base for the veterans that come home today who are entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs, and they have no place to turn that at least makes sense and is supportive for them. So that's my history lesson. These are the kinds of things I still think about, and I'm grateful to be here in this discussion with you guys and gals this morning, because I want to hear from you as well about how I can continue to play some role in helping to improve the opportunities, the processes, and the policies that drive your access to contracting and otherwise in your small business. So thank you.
Bill, I want to thank you for sharing that information with us. For those in the audience that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, as Curtis said at the top, my name is Walter Cotton. I'm a disabled veteran business owner like yourself, turned advocate. And today we're going to get an opportunity to peek behind the curtain and talk about some strategies that will accelerate the growth of your business. We're really leaning hard on that requirement for maximum practicable utilization and contracting for the federal government. And for those of you who are not aware, maximum practicable utilization is actually the policy of Congress as it relates to interfacing with our small business community. And there's a long history in terms of why that's there, and we can talk about that in another webinar. But for this webinar, I want to talk to you specifically about how you get your guns, lawyers, and extra ammunition marshaled and ready for the ascension into the new 5% goal that Congress saw fit to make available for our disabled veterans. And for those of you who are not aware of that particular action, as a part of the 2024 National Defense Authorization Act, Congress sought to reward Bill Elmore's great work in terms of helping the service disabled veteran business community achieve the 3% goal in record number by expanding it to 5%. One of the challenges that most veterans have had as they've worked through this particular process, and you guys will have to excuse me as I try to make sure I got these logistics right. Okay. I can see that we're going to have to rotate these views, but I'll get that done for you. Um, what the Congress did was Congress said, hey, let's make sure that these men and women who have borne the battle have fuller access to contracting opportunities. And again, rewarding the success, all right, that Bill Elmore has created. And so what I'm interested in doing is making sure that our veteran community is operating from a better believable dream. And that better believable dream in federal contracting has everything to do with us as a community learning how to become bigger small businesses, right? Because at the end of the day, no one will argue the fact that our government and our acquisition process is large business centric. You guys have heard that old adage, no one ever got fired for hiring IBM. And as a result of that particular condition, the default in most cases in contracting has been towards large or other than small businesses. We as a community benefit by learning how to become bigger small businesses, because what that does is it empowers us with the ability to bring the full weight of the existing settled law that produces advantages for us in contract capture. And I'll ask you guys to please humor me as I go through the process of rotating these slides to make sure that they render correctly. But those bigger small businesses have the ability to organize themselves into business units, or should I say enterprises, that look like what you see on the screen. And you can accomplish the creation of these businesses by utilizing a strategy that I had the luxury of popularizing throughout the federal space, which is the joint venturing business model. And I tell people this statement often. I did not invent the joint venturing business model. I just popularized it through the veteran community because of necessity. Now, this slide here, I think, kind of encapsulates everything that people like Bill and myself have done to unleash this superpower that you have access to. And what this slide speaks to, the upper left-hand slide, speaks to the fact that Bill and myself and a small cadre of brothers have done everything that was necessary to ensure that the playing field and acquisition moved from its equality space to an equity space, which means small businesses, and more importantly, disabled veteran and veteran small businesses have an equal seat at the table. Those legislative changes have unleashed a superpower that empower you with the ability to more fully take advantage of contracting opportunities. And those contracting opportunities I am promoting should be targeted towards helping us revitalize our defense industrial base, as well as our national security industrial base. As a part of this presentation, I'm going to show you more than $3 trillion worth of new market opportunity that you're not made aware of very often. And those market opportunities are only available to those organizations that learn how to utilize strategic alliances to become bigger small businesses. And it doesn't matter whether you utilize the Mentor Protégé program or affiliation exemption, you have to utilize mechanisms to create that capacity, that capability to handle the requirements that are on your customer's desk. If you do that effectively, that's where you're able to bring the power of existing settled law to work for you. And the settled law and policy that I'm specifically pointing to is the rule of two, right? That's under FAR 19 502B, which requires the contracting community to do market research and eliminate the availability of small businesses before they can employ a full and open competition. Well, if you understand the methodologies that I teach, you are able to create a gap between the contract action and the contracting community's desire to take those contracts large business. Now, let me go to this next slide, which I think will be kind of revealing on some levels, because for my participation in this, I go back over 20 years of advocacy, and I didn't become an advocate in the federal space because of desire. I became an advocate because I had no other choice. And the picture that you see on your screen now actually came from what was then the Veteran Business Journal. And for those of you who are old or historians in the federal contracting space, you know that the Veteran Business Journal morphed and became what most of you today know is or as NAVOBA. Well, back then, what I did was I was able to take the strategy I'm going to share with you today and use it to capture my first contract, which was an $8 million service disabled veteran award. That was during a novel season. But the thing that I did, which was dissimilar to what the next guy would have done, instead of keeping that private knowledge to myself, I got together with Billy Jenkins, who actually was a gentleman that Bill Elmore introduced me to, and my friends over at the American Legion, and we went around the country on my dime and advocated, we evangelized the good news of service disabled veteran joint venturing. And as a result of educating our community to that capability, it made a tremendous contribution toward us achieving that 3% contracting goal in the shortest period of time. Now, this slide right here is the cat's meow. It provides everything that you need to know about the system that we are sharing with you, which is utilizing the joint venturing business model. And to explain that model to you, the service disabled veteran or veteran-owned business commingles their capability with a partner that has the solution mix. It has the scalability, it has the organizational size and past performance that the contracting officer is looking for, and they conjoin that into a LLC, right? And that LLC becomes the preference owning service disabled veteran or veteran owned entity that is able to leverage the regulations and laws and policies that you see on the right hand side of your screen. And these are powerful, right? Settled law that are immutable, right? So if you come qualified as a bigger service disabled veteran owned small business, you're able to take advantage of that second bullet, which requires the contracting officers to do market research. And in the event that when the contracting officers go through that market research, they identify two or more small businesses, and in this case, we're talking about service disabled or veteran-owned small businesses that can do the work. The law says that they shall set that work aside for small business competition. That is a powerful, powerful tool that we have within our toolkit, that your ability to become a bigger small business empowers you to leverage towards the market opportunity. And as I said, that market opportunity is a little bit over $3 trillion. And I'll show you where that $3 trillion worth of non-speculative market opportunity comes from. But you're hearing a lot of additional talk in the theater right now about taking this rule of two capability and expanding it to other vehicles. Like right now, or the Office of Federal Procurement and the White House recently issued a memo which also expands that rule of two to multiple schedule awards. So the MSAs now those major IDIQs that have multiple participants, both small business and large business, now are obligated to do market research within that small population before they can make task order awards under those contracts. And for those of you who are aficionados, right, you're not just new entrants in this space, you understand the strength and the power of what I'm pointing your attention to. So if you are a small business contractor on, let's talk about the VA IT-42 next gen contract, and they issue a task order under that contract, under this new set of regulations, they first have to eliminate you before they can issue that task order to the large business community to take advantage of. If you are smart enough and you get yourself in a position where your organization is razor sharp and tiger tough, you're responsive and responsible, you put yourself in a position to be the default awardee for those kinds of contract actions. My interest is in making sure that you have the tools, knowledge, and resources that you need to take the fullest advantage of those contracting actions. And one of those reasons, if you will, why this is really important for me right now is because we have a significant need to replenish our defense industrial base. And it's my position that the patriot, him and her who has borne the battle, are in the best possible position to make sure that that stockpile, that those resources and that supply chain, if you will, is fortified with solutions that have a greater probability of working. And I'm just going to throw this back to a day when we had, let me see, what do we call them? War profiteers that were sending products and services into our theater that did not work. I mean, many of you have heard the old stories about the men and women that were in the field in Vietnam and they had their M16s jamming up because the ammunition didn't work. Well, I'm trying to ensure that as we move forward in replenishing the stockpile, it's being replenished by men and women who have an empathy for our servicemen and women that are in the field. And therefore, they're bringing that extra measure of interest, that extra measure of consideration to the work that they're delivering so that we make sure that we are delivering products that work. Your opportunity is to get your arms around this strategic alliance building capability and create a bigger small business that has diversified capabilities that allow you to meet your customer at their point of need. And what I mean by that specifically, you guys have probably heard that old adage that says the easiest pathway to success in business is to identify what your customer doesn't want to buy from you and stop trying to deliver that to them rather. In this instance, what our customers want. Our customers want a risk reduced award option, meaning they want to be able to award a requirement, fire and forget, and not have that award come back to them in the form of a protest or anything that would delay the continuation of the mission. You all are empowered with the ability to deliver those kinds of solutions in this market season that the contracting community would adhere to. And for those of you who happen to be multi-preferenced, and what I mean by that specifically, you are a service disabled veteran that have a contracting program connected to you, and you are also small disadvantaged business in this season where the president is trying to ensure that we reach 15% small disadvantaged business by 2025, you would be the least risk option for a contracting officer who is trying to achieve that goal. And if you have not heard already, there is legislation moving through Congress right now to hold the agencies accountable. to hold the agencies accountable for not meeting these goals by pulling them up on the hill and causing these stakeholders within the agencies to testify and explain why they are not meeting the goal. So at the end of the day, what I'm pointing your attention to is the fact that you have a superpower that is supported by existing settled law. And if you understand your rights under these provisions of law, and you can organize yourself in a way that you meet the needs or the requirements that are within your customer's point of interest, you put yourself in a position to be the preferred, dare I say, the only award choice for those customers. And if I can, and I want to see if I can do this real quickly, I want to see if I can show you what the market opportunity actually looks like. So bear with me for a second because I'm going to try to share another screen here. And if the creek doesn't rock and the wind doesn't blow, I was able to do that. Hopefully you all are seeing my screen right now. And what you're looking at is one of the many contracting analytics tools that you can get out there. In this particular instance, this is GovTribe. And so if I ask this GovTribe solution to go out and bring back to me the agency which I'm interested in, and in this instance, it happens to be the Department of Veteran Affairs, and then I'm going to ask this system to do something that you're not often told about. I'm going to ask this system to bring back to me those contracts that are coming up for recompete in the next 3 years. Why am I looking at contracts that are coming up for recompete? Because these contracts represent something other than that speculative stuff. And as you can see on the screen, I'm asking the system to look out 3 years and bring back to me those contracts that were already awarded. Listen to this now, folks, that have to be put back in service in order to continue the mission. So if I ask the system to give me a report and show me a graphic look at what kind of a numeric opportunity exists just within the VA for these opportunities, the system brings me back a little bit over $243 billion worth of contract opportunities. I can subsequently take these contract opportunities and I can look at them by industry so that if I wanted to, target this population by industry, the system will allow me to target it by industry. And I'm going to stop looking at the tree view. I'm going to start looking at the table view so that you can see the industries that deliver the kinds of contracts that you may be working in. But the most important view that you want to have of this information is the set aside view. And you want to have that set aside view because what you're interested in defining is what portion of the VA spend was not set aside. And the reason that you want to understand that is because the strategy that we talked about earlier, that strategy you can most completely employ against this spend. And so in this example, what we see is the VA as an agency has a little bit over $241 billion worth of contracts that are coming up for recompete. And that's this first line right here that was not set aside when it was awarded. That means if you are proactive and you can get out in front of these requirements when they come up for recompete, you are now a bigger small business that's standing in the gap. And therefore, you're able to utilize the advantages of the settled law that I talked to you about a little bit earlier. What Bill is endeavoring to do, which is one of the reasons why I so support him, is he's trying to take the advantage that we enjoy within VA under Public Law 109461, which is the Veteran First Act, which says veterans and service disabled veterans have priority within the agency, and he's trying to expand that whole of government. So if I take this report that we're looking at right here and I say, what does that number look like whole of government? It brings back over $3.3 trillion worth of contract opportunities, wink, wink, that were awarded and are coming up for recompete and have to be put back in service to support the mission.
Walter,
3 trillion of
can I
that
interrupt for a
was
second?
not set aside. So if you're smelling what I'm cooking here, I'm suggesting that a slight shift in your business model, a slight shift in the way you look at these contracting actions, put you in a position to take your desired share of that $3 trillion worth of contracts whole of government, or the 241 billion that we looked at only in the VA. And suffice to say that we still have some work to do within the Veterans Administration, where we already own this Uber advantage, because if you look at our performance within the Veterans Administration, we're running at about $9 billion on average of veteran awards. That leaves another $46 billion of contract actions that you can have access to if
Mr.
you
Cox.
can
I'm sorry
become
to
this
interject.
bigger small business.
Hey,
And
Walter,
as a
can
matter
you
of
hear
fact,
us?
we've got some people over talking, so please mute
Oh, no,
your
it's
mic if you're
Actually,
not
Walter.
talking.
Hi,
Yes?
Walter. Can I interrupt for a second? This is Anna Ehrman. I just wanted to let folks know on the previous slide, because you were using GovTribe, for those that do not have a subscription to a paid government data source, there are free resources where you could do very similar kind of research. You could use USA Spending, you could use sam.gov, and we do have other training on that. So everything that you said is great, but it doesn't mean that for folks that do not have a subscription, they can't get to that information. So please proceed. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thanks. Thank you, Anna. I appreciate that clarification. So to bring this whole conversation to a close and open the floor up for conversation or questions, I'm going to reinforce the fact that if you're smelling what I'm cooking here, right? This is the season for us as veteran and disabled veteran business owners to come to the employ of our government in a way that they need us, right? They need us to revitalize the industrial base as we go through the process of reestablishing our advantage in the theater of battle. And a lot of people don't recognize that our greatest deterrent globally as a fighting force is deterrent. Our strength and everyone's awareness of our strength is one of the greatest deterrents to any type of a kinetic battle. And I want us to make sure that him and her who bears the battle moving forward has all of the resources to ensure that they are going to be successful. The last slide I'll share with you before I open this up for questions is an opportunity for you to have a free 30-minute Ask the Expert session. And because this is recorded, I'm going to put in the chat the unique discount code that those of you who came to the webinar have to use to get access to this. I understand that we had over 1,500 people registered for this event, and I can guarantee you that thousands of them will view it online. But those of you who are early adapters should be rewarded for taking your time out. And so I'm going to put that chat or that code in the chat that you'll have to include with your request for an invitation. And with that, Curtis, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you and open up the floor for questions.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Let's start off. Question for you. Is sam.gov the only place to find federal contracts? Are there any other links?
sam.gov, the only place to find federal contracts. As Anna pointed out very efficiently, there are several free utilities out there like usaspending.gov, probably the better analytics tool for you to use to find contracting opportunities. But sam.gov is kind of the default repository, which took over from the old approach that the government used to use for advertising their contracts. And as Anna pointed out, there are many paid tools that you can use to find that same information.
Thank you. So this is Anna again. So SAM is the system of record, as Walter said. Opportunities over $25,000 that are in the open market do have to be posted there. There are some that do not go on SAM, and Walter had mentioned one instance, that is the multiple award contract vehicles, otherwise known as IDIQs or GWACs. Those are pre-negotiated contracts, so opportunities for task orders under those contracts are only made available to those contract holders. The other type on the bottom of that scale are the simplified acquisitions and the micro purchases, the buys under 25,000 that do not have to be posted. Some of them you could find on reverse auction sites, such as Fed Connect and Unison Marketplace. And some of those micro purchases are just doing good market research and letting government folks know when what you have and marketing yourself. And if they have a need for a small item, for example, catering a breakfast for 10 people or ordering $500 worth of pens or something like that, then they could just do the market research and buy that without having to formally publish it. Thank you.
That's a good point in addition. And there's another enormous population of opportunities that also don't make it into advertising. And those are those opportunities that are within what's known as the micro purchase threshold, right? Those are the $10,000 and below purchases that are traditionally made on a procurement card. We have the luxury of having the gentleman who has introduced the de facto solution for that particular area joining us in next month's webinar. So those of you who are interested in figuring out how you crack the micro purchase threshold arena, please join us for that session. Thank you, Anna, for that contribution. Curtis, next question.
Absolutely. Is there a dollar amount associated to the 5% target that you mentioned earlier?
No, there's not a specific dollar amount. It's 5% of the budget that the federal government lets on an annual basis. And because that fluctuates depending on the budget and appropriation, there is no specific number. But you can say that on average, it's turning out to be, somewhere near about $300 to $500 billion that are let on an annual basis.
Thank you. How do you suggest that consultants who work with SDVOSBs best advocate for and assist them?
How do consultants best advocate for? Well, the advocacy space is a totally different space from assisting veterans. So when I think of advocacy, I'm thinking of reaching into the regulation, reaching into the legislative process, and changing the regulations so that they accomplish the goals that we need to accomplish. Like, for example, when there was an issue vis-a-vis parity in government contracting, we had to work with the House and the Senate to get them to issue new bills that would address that particular area. So from my point of view, if you are a advocate for disabled veterans and you are also a consultant, that would put you in a position to have access to our strongest weapon, our strongest tool in the legislative process, which is the Veteran Service Organization community. Our VSOs, whether it be the American Legion, right, the Disabled Veterans of America, and I could go on and on and on, are very respected on the Hill. So if you're a consultant and you don't have access to a VSO to help champion the issue that you're looking to drive for veterans. You're trying to run a race with one leg.
Thank
Next
you.
question.
Somebody asked, will the slides be available after the webinar? Yes, you will receive a copy of the slides and the recording by tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Excellent. And I did have a survey that I wanted to try to get an understanding of. And so those of you who are still with us, if you don't mind answering these questions in the chat. The first question that I wanted to get an understanding of was, how many of the participants on the call are new entrants, meaning not registered in SAMs, right? But you have a strong interest in government contracting. Please indicate that in the chat. The other thing that I wanted to understand is how many of the participants are veteran-owned small businesses versus service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. We need that information for some work that Bill told you we're doing on the Hill with our congressional stakeholders. And then the last two questions that I would like to get an understanding of is, how many of our veteran-owned or disabled veteran-owned small businesses have graduated their primary NEXT code? How many have graduated their primary size standard? And the reason that I'm interested in that question is because you all represent good, strong strategic alliance partners for the new entrant service disabled veterans. And then finally, how many on the call are none of the above, right? How many are not veteran, not service disabled veteran, but business owners? And the reason I want to understand that is because we always have a number of other than small businesses that are lurking and learning at these events. And we want to capture them so that we can marry them up with the right service disabled veteran or the right veteran owned small business to go out and take advantage of some of this market share opportunity. Next question.
Thank you. Next question. Is the 5% SDVOSB requirement for SDVOSB prime contract dollars, or is it also inclusive of other than small businesses subcontracting to SDVOSBs?
The 5% is specifically for prime contract award to SDVOSB. There is also a subcontracting goal, but the 5% increase is specifically for prime contract awards to SDVOSB.
There's actually the subcontracting goal with this bill is also 5%. So they are two separate goals that the government is trying to address.
Thank you, Anna.
Somebody asked, so should I change my formation structure to LLC? I'm a sole proprietor now.
It would be my recommendation that you get together with your advisor, your consultant, and your consultant would help you with this, because changing your primary business operating model may not be necessary for you to take advantage of the strategies that we're talking about, because in order for you to utilize that strategy, you'd have to create a new LLC with your partner that has capability and capacity. And let me give you an indication of what we're seeing as trends in the space right now. I currently have a $5 billion tribal concern that is aggressively pursuing relationships with our service disabled veterans because of all of the activity that they're seeing around the threats that they're experiencing because of things like the Ultima lawsuit on the 8A side of the equation. So at the end of the day, this is a very good season for service disabled veterans that are agile and have an interest in moving into the directions and the value thresholds that their customers are looking to do awards in, to be pulling together relationships with other than small businesses that want to take advantage of your status and your access to the market.
Thank you. Are there any resources that can help with responding to RFPs?
Well, there are a number of resources out there that cost money, right? There's a cottage industry out there that is built around helping those businesses that don't have a competency in responding to RFPs respond. But what I recommend and what I advocate, which is why I promote the joint venturing business model, you, in 99.9% of the cases, when you create a strategic alliance with a going concern that has capability and capacity in an industry that you don't have, that own capability and capacity in, those organizations have a proposal response capability and they have excess capacity within that proposal response group. And so leaning on that capability is one of the other ways for you to acquire a real and proven competency in proposal response without taking the risk of having to hire someone that may not get it right for you.
Thank you. Got a question. When is the discussion going to occur to have SBA recognize SDVOSBs as disadvantaged business enterprise?
Wow, now that's a tall one for me. I don't know that there is a current effort underway right now to have service disabled veterans at large recognized as small disadvantaged enterprises. I will tell you that there are certain conditions that service disabled veterans find themselves in that afford them access to that designation, whether it's a result of their percentage of disability or the like. But I am not aware of a uniformed effort right now to cause service disabled veterans to be also designated organically or natively as small disadvantaged businesses.
Yeah, Walter, if I might jump in here, a couple of insights from my 12 years inside SBA. And one is that there are disabled veterans and veteran small business owners in all of the other procurement programs already, but they've designated themselves as a woman-owned small business, for example, for the WOSB goal. Now, what I would suggest is one of the things that happened before I went to SBA was the Paralyzed Veterans of America had petitioned the SBA for the inclusion of disabled veterans and other disabled people to be included into the 8A program as a presumed social economically disadvantaged group. And SBA turned down that request from Paralyzed Veterans of America. But the point there is, and Walter touched on it, if you want to help organize an effort to try to secure that inclusion that way, you simply need to start talking to people about it. There are 2 advisory committees at the SBA that advise not just SBA, but the White House and Congress about their policy recommendations. So one starting point would be to contact the Office of Veterans Business Development, inquire about how do you engage with, track, if you will, look at the annual reports that those 2 advisory committees produce that go to Congress and go to the White House and go to SBA and the administrator. And if that's a recommendation that you can get other people behind you with that, perhaps you'll get it done. That's really, from the policy perspective, some of the venues that are out there and available to you to use right now.
Thank you, sir. Next question. I got 2 questions here asking about the code. And can somebody put the free code in the chat? Can you put the free code in the chat, Mr. Cotton?
Yes, sir. Consider that done. I just did that a few seconds ago, so that code is in the chat. And please include that in the subject line of your request for the meeting, because I'll be very diligent about not allowing those people that don't have it in the subject matter to participate.
Thank you. Is there a requirement for SDVOSBs to control 51% of awards when partnering with a partner?
That is a core fundamental requirement of any type of a strategic alliance that seeks service disabled veteran or preference owning award. The regulation requires that the preference owning organization meet two fundamental criteria. One, they have to own 51% of the enterprise, and that's something that you can clearly delineate in your articles of incorporation or the LLC documentation. But the other component, and this is one that a lot of people miss, the preference owning organization also has to have control. They have to have control, the ability to demonstrate that they control the enterprise. And I see a lot of protests sustained because SDVOSBs have allowed their partner to create a operating agreement that siphons control away from the service disabled veteran. So to say it succinctly, Curtis, the two criteria are: one, yes, the preference owning organization has to be the majority owner of the LLC or of the partnering enterprise, and the articles of incorporation or the operating agreement for the LLC must clearly delineate that the preference owning organization, the service disabled veteran in this case, has the ability to control. And I usually achieve that by making sure that they're able to make all major decisions for that enterprise.
Thank you.
Curtis, let me jump in a second. This is Anna Ehrman again. So first of all, I want to thank Walter and Bill for sharing fantastic information. In reference to the previous question, I couldn't find my unmute button fast enough. Any conversations, any other appointments or meetings beyond this presentation, that is between you, the small business owners, and our presenters. So those are outside the auspices of the VA. So those are certainly not endorsed by the government. So just want to let you folks know this information we have reviewed and we are in concert on. The other one is up to the business owner's own decision and time. So thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. Who is the tribal concern?
The tribal concern that I was talking about a little bit earlier is the Potawatomi Indian tribe. PBDC, we affectionately refer to them as, and you can, Google them to find the PBDC federal group, and you'll see an organization that has robust capability and capacity in multiple industries. And we currently have them set up with 2 service disabled veteran partners, but they're looking for an additional 20. So the Potawatomi Business Development Corporation is the tribe I mentioned in my statement.
Thank you. I'm very interested in how we can reach these Native American organizations. How can I get help with obtaining a mentor or someone who can assist me with the process? I'm brand new to this, but I have my minority small business, disabled vet certification. I need guidance.
Well, I would say that you would be a great candidate for that free half-hour session that I offered for discovery. And, I'm a straight no chaser kind of guy. So I'll give it to you straight. If you're a good candidate for a tribal connection, I'll let you know that. If not, I'll send you down a remedial course where you perhaps identify non-tribal small businesses that don't own your preference, wink, wink, that have an interest in scaling in the industry that they're in. And those organizations might be a better starting point for you to start building your competency in leveraging the strategic alliance capture model.
There are also other resources available depending on your question. Obviously, with VA related how to do business with the department, that's something that Wendy Curtis and myself could help you with. So please let us know. There are also SBA provided resources, the Veterans Business Outreach Centers, the Small Business Development Centers, Women's Business Centers, and of course the Apex accelerators that are funded by DoD that have training and counseling available to you as well. So build your industry network, build your mentor network with multiple people that could assist you in your journeys.
Thank you, Anna. And thank everyone today. That's all the questions we have for the moment. I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Bill, for your time, your efforts in this wonderful presentation. I hope everybody have a wonderful day. And if we didn't get to your questions, I will go through them later, and I will actually send them to Mr. Cotton if it's something that we did not answer. And feel free to please contact us at stratcom, OSDBU.gov if you have any questions, or feel free to email us. Thank you, and I hope everybody have a wonderful day. Until next time.